No matter how long I live, I'll never be able to trust a single thing that I hear from mainstream media in the West ever again in my entire life. I will see a headline and immediately have an impulsive, unhelpable reaction of just doubting what it says every single time, because I've never seen anything more fucking phony and dishonest and knowingly, insidiously false and full of misinformation and disinformation than the coverage of this now 1 week old conflict so far, this war, this full land invasion of another country. Right away, I had a problem. Like, I would just have a wince reaction to almost every aspect of this. I've said in other places that the first moment where I really had this feeling was when I saw Ukraine's official Twitter calling for the Russian Twitter to be banned. I'm going to find that. Alright, so here it is here. So this is Ukraine's official Twitter, presumably. Nearly 2 million followers now, and I think it had a fraction of that before. But it says, hey people, hey people, hey people. We just got invaded, but colloquial hey people, and then let's, or involving everyone, let's demand Twitter to remove Russia from here. So there was a full military invasion of the country, and the Twitter account is colloquially involving the public West in English to remove Russia's Twitter account from the platform. Is it still up? Let's see. Alright, so it didn't work, but Russia, a country 3 or 4 times bigger, has a quarter of the followers. Alright, so there you go. There you can see the extent of the marketing campaign of this war already. It's clear just from that which country is selling this war better. They should not be allowed to use these platforms to promote their image while brutally killing the Ukrainian people. And this was February the 24th, where at that point, brutal killing was yet to happen, I think. That was the outset of the invasion, where they had no incentive to engage yet. That was purely to hit military targets, to incapacitate the military capacity of the other country, and to gauge the strength of the opposition. So there would have been no incentive at that point. Needless to say, this shit is all pretty obvious, so brutally killing the Ukrainian people. So they're trying to get a Twitter account taken down after they're being invaded, and that is just bizarre. That made me cringe. What the fuck? They're trying to generate headlines in a war. I've already complained before, when I'm commenting on Total War, about how phony the Twitter activity of corporations is, but this is the Twitter activity of countries, sovereign states, and they're doing this kind of petty bullshit. It's weird, really weird, just off. Like, that just strikes a wrong chord with me. It's But yeah, that's an aside. Let's get back to this. So immediately after that, February the 25th, so part of a day has elapsed, and already we have headlines coming out that are striking. These headlines serve a purpose. So what happened here? An island that was being defended by National Guard, so it's just people stationed there as a garrison, are faced with a warship. It's a standoff, and the warship radios them to surrender, and they say "Idi nahoy, idi nahoy," which means "go to a dick," I think. But of course, this is for the West, and especially America. So "go to a dick," "Idi nahoy" transliterates over to "go and fuck yourself" if you're in Scotland or the UK, but for Americans it's "go fuck yourself." So American. It's so minor, but these things all just add up together. You can see the packaging and the labelling on all of this stuff, and it's so you have this, right? So this is a heroic last stand, like at Thermopylae. It's just pure defiance. Sticking the middle finger up before you get hanged, like that anti-fash, that Stepan Filipovich, who was about to be hanged for partisan activity, and he said death to fascism, freedom to the people before he died. So everyone knows the guy that's defiant to the last second. It is ingrained in our psychology. So it's completely symbolic as fuck. They made statues out of that guy to go out with your back straight, your chin up, no fear, and say fuck you to your enemy. And that's what they did here. It's the perfect martyr story. They're all martyrs together, 13 of them. They were on an island, and they said to the Russian battleship that's much stronger than them, the Goliath to the David that they were, fuck yourself, blows away, we don't give a shit. And they died heroically. So all border guards died heroically, but did not give up, Zelensky said. And this was probably the main war propaganda talking point at this point in the war, 25th of February. So immediately there was a headline and something to rally around, a side to choose, David to the Goliath. And then if you go forward by a few hours, you see tweets like this starting to appear. This was 8 p.m. on February the 26th. This guy is just an example. This is just a guy that I'm picking on at the moment. This guy is a counter-corruption advisor to Congress, and he has said, I'm racking my brain for a historical parallel to the courage and fight spirit of the Ukrainians and coming up empty. How many people have ever stood up their ground against an aggressor like this? It's legendary. Guy over in America looking at the headlines and going along with it. And then someone says the Lakota and the Cheyenne, the Seminole, the Pueblo, the Chiricahua, the Confederacy under Tecumseh. So it's just a Chickamauga Cherokees, Red Stick Muskogees, the Pequot. Look at all of these Native Americans that also heroically stood up to the conqueror that came to their doorstep and tried to take their land. I love how none of these examples even have to go outside of America, so his own country provides endless examples of this. He doesn't even know the history of his own country, which is the point being made here. It's part of human history that this happens all the time, but you have these sensationalistic American politicians and bureaucrats that are leaving these remarks. It's like they're cheering on a sports team or something, just pure hyperbole, pure, what do you call it? Superlatives, like that's where it is. They're trying to talk up, it's like they're trying to sell it to you. So even in a football match, even if there's fucking nothing happening, the commentators are still obligated to try and keep the atmosphere up, to try and keep the pace up, the tempo. So they're obviously going to try and glorify everything. It's like they're trying to sell it to you. What they have is the best they're going to get, and they're going to try and sell it to you with what they say. It reminds me of that, like these Americans when they talk about stuff, my god. They don't believe any of what they're saying. It's all motivated articulation, and they're trying to convince you of something that even they don't believe. Alright, so that's an example. This guy is counter-corruption advisor to Congress. And he hits out with absolute bullshit like this, absolute bollocks like this. So I saw stuff like this appear and I was cringing at that. And then let's go over to the mainstream press, the Times. This is just an example again. So this is on the same day as this, and you've got a bit of a David versus Goliath narrative here as well. And look at this. When Boris Johnson got off the phone with Volodymyr Zelensky, a little after 7am on Friday, he turned to an aide and said, Jesus, that guy's brave. The Prime Minister had just listened to the Ukrainian President recounting how Russian soldiers had wiped out a group of 13 Ukrainians occupying the tiny outpost of Snake Island in the Black Sea. Urged to surrender, they replied, go fuck yourselves, before they were slaughtered. Heroes, said Johnson. Heroes. Oh yes, heroes. So you've got the mainstream press buying into this. You've got statesmen accepting it together. So Zelensky himself buys into this and proliferates it, and Boris Johnson goes along with it, and the mainstream press picks up on it. Alright. And then 8:30 p.m. on February the 25th, this is a congressman, a Texan congressman in America, fucking Texan, Oh man. Alright, so that's 25th of February, 8 p.m. So that's before even this. That's a day before. Holy shit, this guy was really early. So I should have covered this even sooner. So that is at the same time as The Guardian starts to cover this, even earlier than The Guardian. So this guy beat The Guardian to it, and he's compiled all of this shit. Snake Island says, go fuck yourself, which maybe it did, at least he got that right. Ghost of Kiev kills 5 Russian jets by himself. That made me cringe so hard when I saw that. Nah. Woman passes out sunflower seeds to Russians so they'll grow flowers when they die. And this one, when I heard this, I likewise cringed because you're meant to have to think about it for 5 seconds, figure it out, and then have it shock you and stick in your brain. There's meant to be a psychological hook. There wasn't for me because I figured it out in like 2 seconds. Knew exactly what it was meant to be. But it's kind of like Einstein was bad at maths, or what's another one? Humans have 5 senses, or glass is a liquid at room temperature, which is why windows are thicker at the bottom. All of this fucking nonsense that people just remember because it finds a way to just hook in their brain. And that's what this is. This may have happened. And see the conversation between the woman and the soldier, it's way more interesting than this sunflower seeds bullshit. It's like, it seems like an actual authentic interaction where someone is absolutely furious that their homeland is being invaded by a foreign power and they have nothing to do with it, no say in it. There's nothing they can do and they're outraged. So that's a lot more interesting than this sunflower seed bullshit. Like, this is just cringe, Twitter cringe, algorithm penetrating, psychologically hooking meme cringe. And then this here, 25-year-old woman says she'll make Molotov cocktails this weekend. And this as well, this is not as bad, but this may happen, and if people are chucking Molotovs and it's having an effect on the conflict, then that is more heroic than probably any of this bullshit so far, actually resisting and doing it effectively. I just worry that civilians are doing this and getting themselves killed by being an ankle-biting, annoying pain in the ass to the second biggest land army on the planet, arguably the most powerful land invasion force the world can currently muster. I don't think it's a good idea to try and use early 20th century improvisation against a technological advanced 21st century full land invasion army. It doesn't seem sensible, and they should not be encouraging people to do that. They shouldn't do it. Shouldn't be putting these ideas in people's heads. Shouldn't be encouraging civilians to take up arms. Shouldn't be releasing prisoners to fight in, what's it called? In World War II, the Germans had something, it's like a Strees... Strafbattalion. Yeah, so you've got essentially armed civilians, which is the Volksturm. You've got potentially pardoned criminals, the Strafbattalion. And of course, the untrained army of retarded volunteers, the Foreign Legion, soldiers of fortune, fucking idiots on a day trip. These are all unequipped to deal with a modern, well-equipped, technologically advanced army from a superpower. They can't fucking do this, and they're gonna just be getting themselves killed to delay the inevitable. They shouldn't have to, especially given the circumstances. And then he says, Ukrainians are fighters. Putin can go to hell. Go to hell. This is so American. Go to hell. Or it's a guy tweeting to the antagonist of the entire planet, go to hell. And he's a congressman. So it's not even like he's completely anonymous while he does this. He represents his country politically, and he's saying go to hell to the leader of another country that's conducting a land invasion of that country. It's just so bizarre. Alright, so things progress by a day. We've only got a day that's elapsed, a day or two, and by now the whole world is outraged. Everyone is absolutely outraged at Russia. Hitler is reborn as Putin. because only Hitler would ever invade another country, so anyone that does that is Hitler. Everyone is absolutely disgusted and outraged, and there's clearly a prescribed narrative coming from the top and going all the way down. The media is aligning completely in a way that I've never seen before except for one time, and that was when Trump was cancelled by all of the mainstream media, all of the big tech. And that was nothing compared to this. This is another level entirely. And I first sensed it when I saw the tweet about please remove Russia from Twitter. That was when I first realised that there was going to be a circle jerk starting. That was when I realised that there was something going on, something strange was going to be happening. And sure enough, Twitter and Facebook and YouTube have all in one way or another picked a side on this and are affecting the discourse, affecting the information that people can see. So we have this headline on the 27th. After the outrage has been manufactured, the consent for sanctions exists and is deep-rooted in the population of the world. Well, the West, I should specify. You have all of these sanctions that have been granted. You have funding that's been granted, arms that have been arranged to be sent. So it's very clear which side the West has taken on this conflict. And a big part of that is people, the everyday people, have seen all of these headlines that are clearly serving war propaganda purposes and have been spread far and wide, and are going along with their countries getting involved and doing what they're supposed to, what has been dictated to them by the puppet master that controls all of these states in the West. So the headline here now, a few days later, after Boris Johnson has bought into it, after the whole of the UK public has bought into it, and probably the entire West, Ukrainian soldiers who profanely told off Russian warship may be alive, officials say. The Ukrainian troops on Zminy Island, also known as Snake Island, may instead have been captured by Russian military forces, according to a statement from the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine. So 2 days passed barely, and now we're getting told that we don't have basis to believe that they are dead. They may be alive. We sincerely hope that the boys will return home as soon as possible, and the information received at the time of the attack on the death will not be confirmed. So the death was never confirmed in the first place. It was a baseless headline and they just ran it. And then after this, this is 1 day ago, so hang on, I'm going to refresh this. Yep, so barely a day ago now, so 1 or 2 days ago, Snake Island soldiers who told Russian forces to go fuck yourself are alive, Ukraine says. So now the official statement has changed from they're dead and they're heroes, and Boris Johnson, know about these heroes please and decide whether to send aid and how much aid to send. It's changed from they're heroic martyrs that should be heroes of Ukraine. That was something as well. They were supposed to be posthumously awarded heroes of Ukraine for dying, which they didn't do. They didn't die. So yep, 1 day ago, Ukrainian soldiers believed to have died while defending an island from Russian forces may still be alive, according to Ukraine's State Border Guard. The 13 soldiers who were stationed on the island in the Black Sea recorded themselves talking about an enemy attack from Russian forces on Thursday in a radio exchange shared on Twitter that has been seen millions of times, potentially even approaching billions of times by now. Of course, fucking Boris Johnson knows about it. The whole world knows about it. It was the #1 war propaganda meme. It's now changed to they're probably alive. And then it says here, but in a statement posted on Facebook, the State Border Guard Services of Ukraine said, we have a strong belief that all Ukrainian defenders on Snake Island may be alive. A strong belief. After receiving information about their possible location, the Border Guard, together with armed forces of Ukraine, are conducting work on identifying our soldiers. And this was one of the first instances that we had, the first confirmations of casualties of the entire conflict. These guys that heroically martyred themselves, these were the first ones to go down, and they went down heroically, except they didn't, because now state sources Yep, I found it. So this is the official post by the State Border Guard Service of Ukraine, and it says, "We are concerned that the defenders return home as soon as possible. The State Border Service of Ukraine, together with armed forces, do not abandon action to know the fate of all brave border guards and marines who defended the island. Please note that information about 13 dead border guards was voiced based on preliminary data received at the time of the enemy's attack on the island, after which the connection was lost." So they concluded, based on connection being lost, that they were dead, which is not a sensible inference to have made. If you shell a fortified position, rarely do they all die. Casualties are inflicted with a lot of munitions being expended on a hard defensive location. It takes a lot of shells to produce not many casualties, and that's always been like that, and it will never change. Connection being lost, that's one of the first things that will happen. They hung up the fucking phone so they could hide and not die, which presumably worked because they're not fucking dead. So it was all bullshit, and they fucking knew it was bullshit. They knew that they were fucking alive the whole time, for fuck's sake. Russia has no motivation to kill Ukrainians in and of themselves. They're motivated to kill the people that they've indicated they want to kill. Zelensky and his board, presumably, the people that can form a government with him, and the neo-Nazis in Ukraine, who are going to get fucking smashed when they get encircled yet again, because that's what happens every time Nazis come up against fucking Russians. They get fucking surrounded and crushed, and that will happen again to all of Europe's neo-Nazis in Ukraine in the next month. So we've got one example of blatant propaganda so far. Snake Island was complete bullshit. I knew it was bullshit the moment I read it, because it just struck me as blatant propaganda immediately. There was no way this bullshit fucking happened. Fuck off, no way. But what it did do was serve the purpose of giving everyone a cue as to which side to be on, which sports team to cheer for, which underdog story there is to latch onto, and that's what everyone did. So it served its purpose. It did not matter at all if it was true, because headlines don't need to be true to be printed. And then if you go to the Wikipedia page for Attack on Snake Island, it even says here now, casualties and losses, none. None. Whole garrison killed or captured, one search and rescue boat seized, killed or captured. I think this is different from when I last looked at it. Let's take a look at the history. Let's just start looking at random examples of the article. Whole garrison captured. Look at that, it's been doctored. Is it locked? This article is semi-protected until March 25th. There's an edit war on this fucking article because people want to have the article give credit, give credence. Just an air of credence. Let people like to this article and just believe it. Let them have their myth. There's an edit war over war propaganda that is obviously just completely fraudulent. Look at this. So it used to say casualties and losses and no one had died, whole garrison captured, but that got changed, and you could figure out who changed it, but it got changed to let's see if there's any. Look at all these revisions. It was going for hours at one point. Let's look at the live version then. Whole garrison killed or captured. So I don't even need to say anything more. There's an edit war going on right now. The ghost of Kiev. Alright. Everyone has heard about this as well. Please stop posting Ghost of Kiev stuff. It's a complete fake made up by a War Thunder YouTuber who's now going to try and profit off of it. I may have given you shit in the past, but God, I hope this is true though. If it isn't, then we've managed to create a fictional hero for the Ukrainian supporters to rally behind. That might honestly be just as good. I'd be happy with that. Plus, if it does turn out to be fictional, I'd be okay with selling Ghost of Kiev merch, GOK merch. Wouldn't feel tasteful otherwise. If it's made up, which he knows it is because he fucking made it up, then he wouldn't have a problem selling merchandise. He wouldn't mind being a war profiteer that peddled bullshit that could influence geopolitics, potentially long term. He doesn't mind making money off of increasing the opacity of the fog of war and muddying the waters and causing further confusion. He has no problem with that. He's happy to sell merch while he does that. Yeah. So this guy clearly wanted to be a fucking war profiteer, and he got caught. He realised he wasn't going to get away with it. It was fucking stupid. Koala didn't start the rumour, he just went with it without doing any research. And even if this is completely false, at least there's a boogeyman for Russian pilots to be afraid of. Yep. Maybe. But at the same time, Russia knows, I think, that they completely wiped out all of the airfields. They probably have a special kind of bomb by now that can destroy runways and prevent airfields from being used, just keeping all aircraft grounded permanently. That's what they're incentivized to do. That would have been their battle plan, and I think that was their battle plan, to just neutralise the air capacity of the country completely from the outset. All conflicts have exaggerated myths, but that aren't confirmed. Let people have heroes. Let people have heroes. Let people enjoy things. Let people have heroes. Let people delude themselves. Let misinformation spread. Let decisions be misinformed. Let nukes start flying. Fucking disgusting. So here is the guy that was behind the Ghost of Kiev. He has made a 22-minute video, and this has barely 1,000 views. I clicked on this when it had 400 views, 500 views, and it hasn't really had many more since. That was the 27th of February. It's been a few days since then. So only 1,000 views on the video where the guy who is behind this complete fabrication comes clean and gives a thorough explanation. This explanation had to come out sooner or later, so I commend him for doing it. And this is important because the only way that someone could arrive at the epistemically justified position of knowing for a fact that this myth is completely unfounded, made up, fabricated fairy tale bullshit is if they watched this video, and only 1,000 people did. And that's part of why I decided to go ahead and make this video, because this silly myth that was flying around the whole internet, the whole Western Hemisphere, the whole Anglosphere, the whole of the US and NATO, that reached millions of people. Hundreds of millions of people have heard about this Ghost of Kiev bullshit. On the other hand, the video that explains it's just nonsense has only been seen by 1,061, and how many people actually watched all the way through. I left a comment when I first came across this 4 days ago, and what I said was, impressions this story has had on global media, anywhere from 50 million to 1 billion. Views on the video that explains it all as a hoax, 500. Views on the video involving people actually listening past the 30-second mark, 200. Welcome to war in the age of the internet. And of course, all of the press ran with this. Let's have a look and see what he says.
A couple of days have been really quite difficult, which are Poland, Belarus and Russia, who've protested against the atrocities currently being committed in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I hope you'll all join me in wishing for a speedy end to this conflict, with as little loss of life as possible.
Of course, but the way we get there is by not ignoring the reality of the situation, addressing reality on its own terms, making accurate, informed decisions, which is what the people in charge have to do, with a public behind them that are not completely deluded and misinformed, while the mainstream media isn't all shooting the same breeze on the back of falsehoods that are going to just completely mislead and sway the public. That's what we don't need. So I think on some level he realises this and regrets it.
The story, as far as I can tell, originated from a previous tweet shared by a user called AldenWW, showing footage of what appeared to be a Ukrainian Air Force MiG-29 Fulcrum flying over the Ukrainian capital of Kiev after the country's Air Force was believed to have been neutralized.
Accurately believed to have been completely blitzed. So I think that's video game footage as well. That thing here, I think this is from a combat simulator game. So a tweet that someone posts about a fucking video game gets picked up on Discord, shared on a Discord server of a YouTuber that uploads War Thunder or something, and then...
I first heard the name Ghost of Kiev on my community Discord server, shared by users Mr. Fisherman1238 and the Gopnik Fish 5339.
So we first heard about it on Discord, being the person that eventually proliferated it. You heard about it just from random Discord fucks, and it was all backed up by a tweet.
And quickly became intrigued in the story. As Discord users shared that he'd reportedly bagged another one, having initially claimed that 2 kills had been confirmed by him, I wanted to share what, in my opinion, was a real-life David and Goliath story.
Oh, David and Goliath story. He actually says the phrase himself. I didn't remember that part. I didn't realise he actually said that, but there you go. That's exactly what's going on here. Manufactured David and Goliath narratives are being picked up by the press, which then forwards them, dictates them. You hear the word dictator a lot nowadays, but the press of the West, the Western media, is the dictatorship. It dictates one prescribed narrative, and it doesn't matter what the truth value is, it only matters the purpose that it serves in terms of propaganda. And it's quite clear that what purpose this served on top of the Snake Island thing.
Nonetheless, this was at 2 AM, and I decided to remove myself from the discussion and head to bed. When the conflict broke out, I first considered taking a stance of complete silence on social media, rather than choosing sides and creating discussion as someone who has no credibility whatsoever in this type of story. Alas, after seeing more footage, I decided that I wanted my channel and my community to be known as supporters of the Ukrainian defenders and their cause. Having surfed through Twitter for some 2 more hours...
So it's bandwagoning. He's motivated to have his Discord join in with the bandwagon to throw in with him, and then he's going to find a David and Goliath narrative to do that.
I rediscovered the video footage of the MiG-29 above Kiev from AldenWW, the pilot I'd come to refer to as the Ghost, or the Ghost of Kiev.
Any word on the Ghost? Just running with it. Oh man. MiG-29 who's been patrolling Kiev. See, they'll run with it. They'll just assume that it's true. It's like Einstein's bad at maths. No one is ever on hand to assess it properly, to scrutinise it. So someone states it boldly, convincingly, and then second-hand becomes even more convinced, and it just becomes an unstoppable meme that spreads.
I shared my initial tweet at just past 4, thinking that it may be intriguing to the 40 or so people who tend to frequent my Twitter posts, then went to sleep. Some 5 hours later, I woke up to find that the tweet had over 3,000 likes and multiple hundreds of comments and retweets, with many people latching onto this apparent story of hope, and even some journalists and news publications reporting the existence of the Ghost as a fact, a couple of which had...
So the press latched onto it after that, so all the way up there's just gullibility, credulity, there's no fact checking, people want it to be true and they just run with it. And this is where we get to the next real cringe. 27th of February, 7 AM. That was only a few hours before this guy uploaded this video here. I think it was 3 hours before this guy made this video. So this tweet happens, and then 3 hours later, this video gets uploaded that explains that it's all a hoax. This video, revealing the truth, gets 1,000 views, and the tweet on Ukraine's official Twitter with 1.7 million followers that already tried to get Russia's account taken down. It got 1.5 million views, 8,000 likes, 13,000 retweets. Everyone running with it.
Доброго вечора, ми з України.
That was video game footage there. That was from that combat simulator. So Ukraine, in the middle of a war, has its Twitter posting as fact footage of a fucking video game to spread an urban legend, a myth. In the first 30 hours of the Russian invasion in February 2022, he shot down 6 Russian military aircraft. They don't have anyone that matches that description over there. They know who their pilots are, they know if they get kills. They have fucking radar signatures, they can tell if planes are grounded if they take off. It never happened, they know it didn't happen. They say it did. It's war propaganda, it's false. They knowingly peddled war propaganda. They were doing it within only a few days. But there's no disclaimer anywhere here. Twitter hasn't done anything about this. They're just letting it sweep through and deceive everyone. It's false. This is state media, Ukraine's official Twitter. Yes, this is the official Twitter account of Ukraine, and it is spreading disinformation.
And tried to message me to ask for my own sources. Most did not. There were also a large number of comments on the tweet asking where I'd gotten this information from and how exactly I was sourcing it, and others already angry that I'd not presented any real evidence of the claimed 3 kills in the first place, during a war that had already seen several professional sources perpetuating misinformation.
Yep, see? It's all just a circle jerk. It's all just towards the end of David and Goliath, big bad Russia, poor little Ukraine. Nothing else matters. It's all that matters. Meanwhile, I'm not going to play this video because Twitter has already determined that it is hateful conduct, but what is this? What is it? What kind of account is this again? This is the official National Guard. It's verified. It has 136,000 followers. And it says here, this tweet violated the Twitter rules about hateful conduct. However, Twitter has determined that it may be in the public's interest for the tweet to remain accessible. And what does it show? It shows Azov fighters of the National Guard greased the bullets with lard against the Kadyrov orcs. So Kadyrov is the Chechen leader. He has a well-trained army of professional soldiers, and they're all Muslims, and they're going over there particularly to face the Azovites, and in response they are putting bacon grease on their bullets. And it's got 3.3 million views. Alright. What else do we have? So this is on the National Guard of Ukraine Twitter. That's the National Guard showing this. This over here in the UK would be hate speech. This would be illegal to do. You would get put in prison if you did this. Also, this country worships someone as probably their main hero, Stepan Bandera, who is a mass murderer of Jews from around the time of the Holocaust, who was a bit of a middleman between the communists and the fascists. On 22nd of January 2010, the outgoing president of Ukraine, Viktor Yushchenko, awarded Bandera the posthumous title Hero of Ukraine. The European Parliament condemned the award, as did Russia, Polish and Jewish politicians and organisations. So, the main hero of Ukraine is a war criminal. He is the leader of Ukrainian ultranationalists, and they're known as Banderites. Stepan Bandera, hero of Ukraine, annulled. And there he is when he's a boy. can tell he kind of looks like a little shit right there. And he's on their stamps as well. And then at football games, there's a really widespread acceptance of this guy as just being a national hero. So they have a mass murderer of Jews in league with the Nazis as the hero of the state. I can't think of any other Ukrainian heroes. Who else have they awarded? Who else did they want to award Hero of Ukraine? Who else has had this award? Recipients, list of heroes of Ukraine, controversial awards, or are there other ones? This is my first time looking at this, by the way, I'm just curious. See, there's all this controversy around it. There's so much Ukrainian Nazi lore. There's so much. It's so interesting. It's like this hidden away aspect of history that's being brought to the surface at the moment, only by the people that don't have an agenda to cover up. A veteran of World War II. Is this a good guy or a bad guy? You have to actually figure out how bad is that. Someone is a hero of Ukraine and have to figure out if they were evil. Assassination. Alright, well, let's go on to the next thing, which is still on the subject of Stepan Bandera. Stepan Bandera monuments. Stepan Bandera monument. How many of them do we have? Monument to Stepan Bandera here. Show me it on the street. Get me down there. I will look at that. Nah, I can't. Let's take a look up here. There he is, Bandera, mass murderer of Jews, and he has a monument that people just walk past in Ukraine. It's a bit weird, isn't it? It's really strange in 2022. That is bizarre. Monuments to mass murderers and people that blend in with fascists in terms of their history. Let's find another one. Yeah, he mass murdered Polish Jews. A lot of those. We have one here, another one. Let's see another one. That looks familiar. Flowers underneath it. So it's not like these things are becoming tarnished and wilting away, being eroded away by the elements, being allowed to fall into ruin. Stepan Bandera, 1909-1959. So there's just monuments to him all over the fucking place. Bandera Avenue. Streets named after him. Sushi time. Stepan Bandera Avenue, how many of those are there? There's one in Brovary, Ternopil, Kiev. Man. So Kiev is currently surrounded by the Red Army, the Russians, and there's a street named after a mass murderer of Jews that they're going to have to fight their way through. Banderi Street. Is there a street? Oh, another street. A street in... outside of... Oh yeah, it's east of the river. So there's a street here. It seems like there's just streets everywhere. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Avenue. Do I need to do boulevard next? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Name streets after him. And the next thing we're going to look at is something else from an official state source, Kiev Independent, and this is really classy. This is really, really classy. Correction: Ukrainian special forces will no longer capture Russian artillerymen. The command of Ukraine's Special Operations Forces has warned that it will not spare Russian artillerymen in response to their brutal shelling of civilians in cities. So, in case you don't understand the significance of this here is a declaration of intent to commit war crimes casually offered by Ukrainian media, the Kiev Independent. Top-notch English language journalism in Ukraine. Oh yeah, top-notch indeed. Very top-notch. Just casually talking about committing war crimes. Alright. That's a bit like the commando order that the Nazis did in World War II that was really controversial, where they said that they wouldn't give captured commandos their rights, they would hand them over to the SS so they could be executed. And that was really controversial. People didn't like that at all. That was horrible. But because they're Russian, I don't know, maybe it's not as big of a deal if it's Russians that are being subject to illegal orders or policies towards foreign combatants, enemy combatants, hostiles. There's not the dignity of the laws of war being afforded to these men that are only there to do what they're told to do in most cases. This is the tragedy of war. Ukrainian civilians are being instructed to take up arms and fight a superior opponent, and on the other side, Russian young men are just doing what they've been ordered to do and are now going to be faced with the threat of being summarily executed if we are to take this as it seems to be intended. The command of Ukraine's Special Operations Forces has warned that it will not spare Russian artillerymen in response to their brutal shelling of civilians in cities. Yep. And this is the original version. From now on, there will be no captured artillery troops, no mercy, no please don't kill me, I surrender, we'll cut it. Every crew, nothing will matter. Commander, driver, targeting and loading specialists will be slaughtered like pigs. Classy. Yep, definitely no fascists in Ukraine at all. Not, of course not. Is this going to be reported at all by the press? Is the declaration of intent to commit war crimes newsworthy for the West? Well, when they don't even acknowledge that they are platforming neo-Nazis from the Azov battalion, which it seems like the BBC did here, they were just not interested in pointing out that they were describing the Azov battalion, who are an extreme far-right ultranationalist neo-Nazi organisation, and it's very obvious that they are, and they always have been, then it's probably no surprise that they wouldn't be interested in covering the fact that Ukraine's state press has just declared an intent by the Ukrainian Defence, National Guard, Army, Armed Forces to commit war crimes. It's just not remarkable that they would omit that and not pick up on it. It's not newsworthy, it doesn't fit the narrative that's to be dictated to everyone from all press sources in the exact same way, in mirror fashion. It just doesn't match up, so they don't do it. And here is Azov. This is arguably Ukraine's last hope of survival in the onslaught of the Russian army. Lead the white races of the world in a final crusade against Semite-led intervention subhumans. Azov's links to neo-Nazi ideology are well documented. Even The Sun ran an article in January describing it as a neo-Nazi militia. The paper further states that on the Azov battalion-affiliated Full Signal Telegram channel, openly racist jokes and memes are posted, and that's just the start of it. I've already covered the greasing of bullets. That's Azov there. That's the National Guard of Ukraine, which the Azov battalion has, I think, been rolled into, being covered. So the National Guard is covering the actions of Azov here. They're essentially one and the same in this circumstance. And to make it even worse, Twitter has, of course, permitted that to stay up. So it would usually constitute a hate crime, hateful conduct, but Twitter decides it stays up. Likewise, Facebook is reversing its ban on posts praising as Ukrainians' far-right Azov battalion, report says. That was February 25th, the day after the invasion. So, as soon as the Russians invaded, all of Western big tech social media decided in unison that they were going to permit, sanction, condone the praising of neo-Nazis They did that. It happened. In 2022, the praising of neo-Nazis is sanctioned by Western social media and big tech. Facebook is backtracking on its ban on praise for Ukraine's far-right armed forces. Posts praising their role in defending Ukraine or being in Ukraine's National Guard will be allowed. Praising their role and praising being in it. The company will continue to ban hate speech. Well, they are founded on hate. Their speech is all about hate. They are hate speech embodied. And hate symbolism. We can't show even their shoulder flashes then. Their patches, their symbolism. Can't show anything to identify them. If you want to actually acknowledge Azov, you do it by looking at their neo-Nazi symbolism. It's on all their stuff. So, it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. And then, on the complete other side, Glenn Greenwald tweeting about RT being banned on YouTube. YouTube bans Russian media outlets across Europe. Google's YouTube said on Tuesday that it would block Kremlin-backed media outlets RT and Sputnik from Europe following similar bans by Facebook and TikTok. It will take time for our systems to fully ramp up. Our teams continue to monitor the situation around the clock to take swift action. YouTube's ban following an announcement from the European Commission that it wanted to remove these media outlets from the EU would apply within the European Union and the UK. So there is a policy that's been handed down from the top, the European Commission, to have Russia be completely isolated. So it's encouraging Russian isolationism. The steps from social media companies come as Western leaders put increasing pressure on these tech firms to limit how Moscow can spread its propaganda. Really? It's propaganda? The only hope any person anywhere has of arriving at anything even remotely resembling the truth of the matter on this conflict is if they can look at both propaganda outlets and figure out, cross-reference, and see what's bullshit and what isn't, which is exactly what I've done. They're attempting to make that more difficult. The bullshit is rampant, and you're meant to be completely at the mercy of the prescribed narrative. You're meant to have no way to actually tell if anything is wrong, so you have to just assume all of it's wrong. You have to just assume the press is worthless, because that's what it is at this point. It's fucking worthless. Previously, the firms had stopped the likes of RT and Sputnik from earning money from advertising on their YouTube channels or from buying ads to promote themselves on Facebook. So now it's just a complete clampdown. And then likewise, it doesn't stop there. It goes all the way up here in the UK. 11 Labour MPs threatened with suspension for signing Stop the War letter attacking NATO. One Labour source warned the left-wingers they can be a mouthpiece for the Kremlin or a Labour MP, but not both. They later withdrew their signatures to the letter. So that is honesty being quelled, being squashed out. We're becoming a dishonest state. Even our politicians are overtly being compelled to toe the line. Labour is just discredited by this. Labour MPs who signed a Stop the War coalition letter slamming NATO and accusing the UK of sabre rattling over Ukraine were threatened with suspension. Castigating your politicians, your MPs, to toe the line. Fall in line or get the fuck out. Some 11 MPs signed a letter by the left-wing campaign group which questioned NATO's legitimacy and accused the defensive alliance of eastward expansion, which obviously has engaged in. It's right on Moscow's doorstep. It's pointed straight at Russia, and NATO's front has crawled its way across the globe from 9,000 kilometres away to finally arrive in Ukraine. It finally arrived in Ukraine, and this is what happens. It also claimed the UK government of having no proposals for a solution. Britain needs to change its policy and start working for peace, not confrontation. It's not allowed to say that. You're not allowed. 2 independent MPs, former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, who was sabotaged by Labour in a soft coup to get him out, to undermine him. He could have been the Prime Minister if he wasn't completely sabotaged by his own party. And that came out as well. It's all out. Jeremy Corbyn was undermined by the corruption of Labour, and he would have been a great leader of the UK. Comes as more than 40 have been killed. Yep, so barely 40 had died in the conflict at that point, in that invasion. But already there was this handed down position that Labour MPs were not allowed to stray from. Look at that, they attempted to make a point and it was crushed. Don't think that they believe any differently as a result of being crushed like this. They still think this, they're just not allowed to say it, not allowed to advocate at all. So, the press is completely compromised. Big tech is compromised. Political parties here in the UK are compromised. Everything's compromised and you just can't believe anything. And I'm gonna just end with some George Carlin.
I don't believe anything the government tells me. Nothing. Zero. Nope. And I don't take very seriously the media or the press in this country, who in the case of the Persian Gulf War were nothing more than unpaid employees of the Department of Defense, and who most of the time function as kind of an unofficial public relations agency for the United States government. So I don't listen to them, I don't really believe in my country, and I gotta tell you folks, I don't get all choked up about yellow ribbons and American flags. I consider them to be symbols, and I leave symbols to the symbol-minded.